March 8th, Daytona Beach Bike Week, a 10-day festival drawing nearly 500,000 bikers, was supposed to be paradise, but for the Mongols Motorcycle Club, it became war. Scouts spotted rival warlocks at a gas station, and within minutes, the Mongols mobilized like a military unit. Surveillance video shows 30 to 40 Mongols surrounding fewer than a dozen warlocks before chaos erupted. Bikes toppled, fists flew, and then gunfire cracked across one of Florida's busiest intersections, sending families diving for cover. 19 evidence markers, pools of blood, and terrified witnesses later told the story of just how close this came to mass tragedy. This is the raid that shook the Mongols. Stick around, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. When paradise turned to chaos. March 8th started off like any other day at Daytona Beach Bike Week, a massive 10-day event that brings nearly 500,000 bikers and motorcycle fans to Florida's coast. But over at the Mongols Motorcycle Club's fortress-style clubhouse in Edgewater, something far darker was already in motion. Law enforcement later revealed that Mongol scouts had spotted members of their sworn enemies, the warlocks, fueling up at a gas station just half an hour away. What happened next played out like something from a crime thriller, but this wasn't fiction. Surveillance cameras and terrified eyewitnesses caught it all in real time. The Mongols didn't just bump into their rivals, they organized. They moved like a military unit. You see them make some comments, it looks like they make some phone calls, they're sending text messages, and within 10 minutes, they leave their clubhouse in Edgewater and they are at the NSB location. Volusia Sheriff Mike Chitwood explained in a tense press conference. His words painted a clear picture of just how fast the Mongols mobilized. They flood the area, they ring the warlocks, and then all hell breaks loose. By around 1 p.m., what looked at first like just another biker meetup spiraled into something far more violent. Video footage from a terrified bystander, who would later bolt into the gas station's bathroom for cover, captures the exact moment when heated words turned into a full-blown clash. In the video, you can see roughly 8 to 12 warlocks near the pumps. Then, out of nowhere, 30 to 40 Mongols roll up, their vests stamped with the Genghis Khan patch that has long been tied to organized crime. At first, it's shoving, posturing, and bikes being knocked over. But within moments, the chaos explodes. And then comes the moment that changed everything. The sharp, unmistakable crack of gunfire cutting across one of Florida's busiest intersections, sending families diving for cover. "This is shooting. That is real," the witness says in shock as he scrambles into the store, the sound of multiple gunshots still rattling the air outside.
The aftermath, a scene of devastation. When the chaos finally ended and the sound of gunfire and roaring engines faded into the distance, what remained looked less like a gas station and more like a war zone. Investigators moved in and marked the ground with 19 evidence markers, each one telling its own part of the story. Shell casings scattered across the pavement, pools of blood, debris from the sudden eruption of violence. 2 men were left on the ground, both warlocks who had been caught up in the gunfire and the brawl. One had been grazed by a bullet across his head. The other had been struck with nunchucks in the middle of the melee. And yet, in a scene where bullets were flying through a busy intersection, it was almost unthinkable that no one had been killed. Sheriff Mike Chitwood himself would later reflect on that stroke of luck. "Thank God nobody was killed out there. We know there were at least 7 guns out there and 4 shooters. You had people getting gas, you had kids inside of the gas station, but survival didn't erase the scars. The psychological toll hit instantly. Witnesses spoke about scenes of pure terror, families throwing themselves to the ground, parents pulling their kids close behind cars and fuel pumps as bullets tore past just feet away. And this wasn't happening in some hidden corner. This was one of the busiest intersections in the area, right at the height of tourist season. Hundreds of innocent bystanders suddenly found themselves in the middle of a gang war they didn't even know was coming. The Mongols, California's warrior brotherhood. The Mongols Motorcycle Club was born in East Los Angeles in December 1969. Its founders were mostly Hispanic Vietnam veterans who had been turned away from other clubs, especially the all-white Hells Angels. Their founder, Louis Costello, gave them a name that fit their ambitions, the Mongols, in honor of Genghis Khan and his conquering empire. And just like their namesake, the Mongols were determined to spread. From the very beginning, they were different. Their motto, "Respect few, fear none," wasn't just a slogan, it was a battle cry, a way of declaring war on the existing motorcycle club hierarchy. They wore their 1% patches proudly, marking themselves as part of the outlaw elite, men who lived by their own rules outside of society and outside the law. Today, the Mongols are the third largest outlaw motorcycle club on the planet, with around 5,000 full-patch members spread across 19 U.S. states and 25 different countries. But what makes them truly feared isn't just their size, it's their reputation. They're known for explosive violence and a high level of criminal sophistication. Law enforcement agencies from the Department of Justice to Europol recognize them as a full-fledged organized crime group with deep involvement in drug trafficking, extortion, weapons violations, and even murder.
The Warlocks, Florida's homegrown rebels. The Warlocks have a very different story, one that didn't start in a city, but out at sea. In February 1967, aboard the USS Shangri-La in the Mediterranean, 13 U.S. Navy sailors began talking about what life would look like after the military. Those conversations turned into a commitment. They would form a motorcycle club of their own. When the ship returned home, one of those sailors, Tom "Grub" Freeland from Lockhart, Florida, made good on the idea. He started the Warlocks' first chapter just outside Orlando, and that original chapter still stands as the club's mother chapter to this day. The Warlocks chose the phoenix as their emblem, a blazing bird rising from the ashes, symbolizing rebirth and freedom after military service. Their colors, yellow, crimson red, and black, quickly became familiar across Florida as the club spread throughout the state. They were smaller than the Mongols, but what they lacked in numbers, they made up for in presence. The Warlocks carved out their territory in Florida and built their own reputation for violence and criminal activity. And because they were so deeply tied to Florida, the confrontation in March hit especially hard. To them, it wasn't just another gang clash, it was a fight on their home turf.
The law, a historic application. What made the arrests that followed truly historic wasn't just how many Mongols were taken down. It was the law prosecutors decided to use against them. In total, 28 members of the club were charged under Florida's fairly new aggravated rioting statute. That charge alone is a second-degree felony, carrying a maximum of 15 years behind bars. The law itself was only passed in 2021, part of Florida's CS/HB1 Combating Public Disorder Bill. At the time, it was aimed at dealing with civil unrest after the nationwide protests of 2020. Under the statute, aggravated rioting applies when 25 or more people take part in a riot that results in serious injuries, over $5,000 in property damage, the use of deadly weapons, or puts the public at risk. For investigators, the New Smyrna Beach shootout was a textbook example. They had video proof of more than 25 Mongols showing up. Firearms weren't just displayed, they were fired. Innocent families and bystanders were caught in the crossfire. And it all happened in daylight at one of the busiest intersections in the county. Police laid it out in their initial statement. This is a complex case involving numerous individuals and groups, many of whom are uncooperative with law enforcement. By charging aggravated rioting, prosecutors didn't just go after the men who pulled the triggers, they swept up everyone who played a part in the coordinated response, treating the Mongols' entire show of force as one criminal act. That strategy marked a turning point. For years, law enforcement had gone after bikers one crime at a time. Drug possession here, gun charges there. But this was different. With aggravated rioting, prosecutors weren't just targeting individuals, they were going after the gang warfare itself. And that legal playbook would become a model for future cases against outlaw motorcycle clubs. The bigger picture, gang violence in America. What happened during Florida Bike Week wasn't just another headline or a routine law enforcement bust. It exposed a much bigger reality, one that stretches far beyond Daytona's streets and deep into the way outlaw motorcycle gangs operate across the country, and how police are being forced to adapt. The first and most chilling takeaway is how bold these gangs have become, choosing to launch a full-scale attack at a crowded gas station right in the middle of peak tourist season, showed a shocking disregard for public safety. This wasn't two bikers throwing fists in a back alley or a fight in some hidden clubhouse. This was violence dropped right into the middle of families and kids who just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The second reality is just how organized these groups really are. The way the Mongols mobilized that day wasn't random. It was military-style coordination. Dozens of members moved into action almost instantly, connected through cell phones and text messages, executing an attack that investigators say was planned, not improvised. It wasn't chaos, it was precision. And the third takeaway might be the most important. This fight isn't confined to Florida. Operation Mongolian Beef had to stretch across multiple states and involve federal agencies because the Mongols and gangs like them don't stop at county lines. They've evolved into sprawling criminal networks that cross state borders and in some cases, even national ones. The future. What comes next? Operation Mongolian Beef may have torn apart the Mongols' Florida stronghold, but law enforcement has made it clear this was just the opening move. Sheriff Chitwood himself warned, this is just the beginning of the storm. And he's right. Taking down a gang this entrenched isn't something solved in months. It takes years of relentless work. The raids left investigators with more than arrests. They walked away with phones, computers, documents, and weapons. Evidence that's now being combed through piece by piece. And from what's already been hinted at, this could trigger a wave of new indictments and arrests. Federal prosecutors are even weighing RICO charges, the same legal hammer used to dismantle mafia families, which could lock Mongols members away for decades. But the biggest shift might be what happened behind the scenes. Operation Mongolian Beef proved that when federal, state, and local agencies work as one, they can go toe-to-toe with gangs that once seemed untouchable. That playbook, SWAT teams, federal warrants, coordinated raids, can now be rolled out against other criminal groups across Florida and beyond. And make no mistake, the message has already been sent. By hitting the Mongols this hard, Florida law enforcement showed every outlaw motorcycle club that the state won't tolerate gang warfare spilling into public spaces. According to investigators, some rival clubs have already scaled back their activity or even left Florida altogether. The storm has only just begun, and what happened after Florida Bike Week is proof that the Mongols and anyone else who tries to follow won't be allowed to wage their wars unchecked. Conclusion. A new chapter in the fight against gang violence. The Florida Bike Week violence and everything that followed with Operation Mongolian Beef wasn't just another police success story. It marked a real turning point in how America deals with outlaw motorcycle gangs. This wasn't some backroom arrest or quiet investigation. This was brazen violence in broad daylight, followed by one of the most sophisticated, coordinated takedowns law enforcement in Florida has ever pulled off. And the legal tools used to prosecute it, the aggravated rioting charges, set a precedent that will echo for years. For the 28 Mongols now staring down sentences of up to 15 years, the message couldn't be clearer. The days of waging open gang wars in public without facing real consequences are gone. From local sheriffs to federal agencies, the justice system is showing it's willing to use its full weight to dismantle these organizations wherever they try to operate. But here's the other side of it. The community played just as big a role. Those witnesses who risked something to record videos, who handed over evidence that tied this case together, they were every bit as important as the investigators who built the case and the prosecutors who used new strategies to lock these gang members down. That partnership between the public and law enforcement is what really turned this case into a victory. Sheriff Chitwood said it himself. Law enforcement will be relentless in tracking down people that come into not only my community, but that come into this state and think they're going to operate a criminal enterprise. That's the new reality for gangs like the Mongols. The era of impunity is over. As the court cases tied to Operation Mongolian Beef keep moving forward, one truth stands out. No matter how feared you are, no matter how tough your reputation might be, nobody is above the law. The Mongols learned that the hard way on that sunny Saturday in March, and their downfall now stands as a warning to anyone else who thinks they can turn Florida's streets into a battlefield.
The Florida Bike Week shooting could have been remembered as a tragedy. Instead, it became the spark that led to one of the most successful operations against organized crime in the state's history. And it proved that when law enforcement and communities stand together, even the most dangerous criminal empires can fall.